So hello, everybody.
Hey, Laura J here with KellyAnne Wolfe, who
Perfect.
is also being supported by her talented cameraman, Ron Berry. We are here tonight because we got connected last night through Freedom Forum. And so I was having a conversation afterwards with KellyAnne, and she's involved with a tremendous amount. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to come on and to better get to know who KellyAnne is, what she's involved in, why she's involved in all of these movements, what's coming up, why now is the time to take action. So that's jumping way far ahead, but it's great to be with you, KellyAnne. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. And just so everybody knows, all the viewers watching this, Laura is an amazing contributor to freedomforumcanada.com. Laura, do you want to tell everybody what you do?
Yeah, I'm an empowerment coach with an alternative approach that's really here to help people remember who and whose they are. And that's not from a religious perspective. It's very much about taking God out of the box, because I believe that we're living in a world where we're kept safely separate from one another by the words that we're using, and not realizing are the sacred swords, which are the way that we set ourselves free or keep ourselves in captivity. And I don't believe that we can afford to passively use those swords any longer, which is why having these conversations is so important.
That's right. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's start off, because I'm sure that there's lots of my viewers that I get questions all the time, and sometimes it's difficult for me to answer everybody. I
Yeah.
mean, I've always got a backup of at least 300 messages so
Right.
that I try to get through, but I do try to answer everybody eventually.
Cool. What's the top question that you get from the most number of people you could just kind of nail right now?
Well, the top question would be, where are we on Saturday? But so yeah, well, but you know what? And at this point, we're in every single city, and I'm so grateful to every single person across the whole country who, who has committed themselves to the entire movement in such a fashion, and with such passion that we now have rallies every single Saturday in virtually every city across this country. And so thank you all to you. Without you guys, we'd be nothing. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Amazing. So Saturday, every Saturday, somewhere in Canada, people are rallying for freedom and standing for truth. And when it's not Saturday, where else are you in this world, KellyAnne?
Well, for the most part, I do a lot of work online. I do a lot of meetings online, and I do a lot of research. So, and we've got such a network now across this country of every culture, every creed, every race, every religion, and everybody working together in such an immaculate fashion that when it comes to research and information and planning and organizing and standing up for the kids, and from legal matters to even political matters. How are we going to confront this? What are we going to do for this? How do I organize that? How am I going to deal with this? How should we go? How should we approach these school boards? These are letters that I'm receiving from public health. These are court documents that we've issued to public health. I mean, it's a constant, not, and you can ask Ron, I'm nonstop all the time. And it's a lot. When, as a strategist, and I've got quite a few years on my belt as a political strategist, working within civil rights. I mean, this is the most significant civil rights movement that has ever happened in Canada and in Canadian history. It absolutely is. And the entire country is involved. We've had over 300,000 people in Quebec march. Our last worldwide protest in Toronto brought out 50,000 people. 25,000 on an average in Vancouver. We've got anywhere from 5 to 10,000 throughout Alberta. Manitoba is terrible. The politicians in Manitoba are terrified because the people have risen, and Saskatchewan's been doing fantastic. And we're just getting bigger. We're still just getting bigger. And there are key people along this movement to absolutely thank for that. Vlad Sobolev, the founder of Hugs Over Masks, We Are All Essential, Facts Over Fear, et cetera, is one of them. Chris Sky is absolutely one of the leading voices in this entire movement. If not for him, I believe that he is directly responsible for raising this nation, directly. Myself, yeah, I've been pretty loud. I mean, 48 charges in. I'm still leading the charges anyways in Canada. And, you know, that's an ongoing event. I mean, Kevin J. Johnson is a political prisoner as we speak right now in Alberta. You know, no judge, no jury, no bail. They just want to shut us up. So, you know, it's a heavy battle, and it's a scary one at times. And we get a lot of threats, and there are some significant, very dangerous situations that we put ourselves in. I mean, I've been personally brutalized by Toronto Police Service. I've been personally arbitrarily detained twice now by the Toronto Police Service, and you know, even brought to prison without my lawyer even knowing where I was. No access to a telephone call, no access to anything, and even a fight to speak to duty counsel. You know, it's absurd. We've got my friend Ed KC right now, who had some minor driving issue in his past that they utilized in order to make him a political prisoner and put him behind bars. He has now served almost 3 months.
For a traffic infraction.
For a traffic infraction, that's right. But because he was one of the leading voices, becoming quickly one of the leading male voices in the freedom movement, they look for anything they can to put him away. I mean, look at the trumped up charges they have on Chris Sky. This nonsense. It's nonsensical. You don't have 5 police officers dressed in plain clothing, in plain vehicles, you know, for better lack of an explanation, storm a man's house in the middle of the night and expect him not to flee. That's ridiculous. Especially a man like Chris Sky, who has been over, like, you know, repeatedly threatened, physically threatened, including his little tiny wife, physically threatened by political actors such as Bernie Farber, who is the founder of Anti-Hate Canada, who has sent goons, who I've personally witnessed sent goons to physically threaten Chris Sky and his wife. You know, Randy Hillier and his nonsensical people, as they, you know, I just witnessed as Randy Hillier attempted to have Chris Sky set up in front of the Supreme Court to be arrested, but the Ottawa Police Department we're having nothing to do with it. So we're facing a lot of different things, and you know, so it is a battle, and no battle comes without its wounds or its scars. But we're fighting, and eventually we're going to win because we stand on the truth. And whether people like it or not, the truth is this: the truth doesn't care about your feelings. The truth just cares about the truth. And it's time that people start accepting that. And the truth is that this is the most dangerous position this country has ever been in, ever. Even before, you know, even before colonization, it wasn't this threatening. So, I mean, we've got mass genocide happening right now in Canada on a grand scale. And it's not just to any one group, not that that is appropriate. It absolutely is not. And that is exactly why we have been inviting the, you know, the Akwesasne tribe and the Anishinaabe tribe and any other tribe who wants to send representatives with us in this cross-country motorcade that we're doing, which I hope you join us on too. It's going to be fantastic, where we will be stopping. We've got, I think 5 or 6, maybe even 7 now scheduled dates for rallies across Canada, where we are going to be bringing information to the people in response to the oppressions that we're experiencing nationwide from the corruption of our free press, of our mainstream media.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's important. It's so important right now for people to understand that what is happening right now, and this is kind of what sparked our conversation tonight, was about all of the bodies, and God bless all the souls that were lost through the heinous crimes that have been committed against humanity for so much longer than we're willing to actually acknowledge, and so much more recently than what we want to acknowledge as well. And the fact that, like, right now what we're experiencing is all of this history being turned up so that we turn our focus away from the present, which is actually where this genocide is being committed against us, who are the natives of this land if we were born here. Like, we are Indigenous people, and that's not in any way to take away from those who were originally here and were overtaken by people that completely deceived and duped those who didn't understand that you could actually own what was God's. Because if God is all things and all things are God's, then how could one man expect to own anything, was the original theory. And then white man came and changed that by imposing their rules and their laws onto those that had been living as natives of their land, and suddenly had another king step onto their kingdom, where they then got to play dumb because they didn't understand the king's rules, and suddenly were then bound by those which they didn't understand, which is, I believe, why we really need to understand laws. And
Yes.
the
We
part,
need to understand, what we need to understand the most is the language.
oh yeah,
So words are everything to a society, to a civilized society, because it's the words that we use that define the laws. And we have a mass miscomprehension of basic, words, of the definitions of basic words in this country, in every country. And this is 100% intentional. There's actually a term for it called psycholinguistic manipulation. And what this is a method of using terminology that will promote a specific emotional response. You see, us as human beings, we are reactionary creatures. Our species is reactive. And this is why we can become very irrational very quickly in so many different situations. And the hardest thing for anybody to put into practice, no matter their age group, is the ability to respond. Now, that's what responsibility really means. Doesn't mean do this on time and do what you're told and, raise your hand when you want to speak and stand in a line. No, that's not being responsible. Being responsible is having the ability to respond, period. And using that ability to respond over your nature to react as an individual. And if you, and like, I have difficulty with this all the time, and I preach it constantly, but it, you get confronted with a lot of people in your face. It's very hard for you to maintain composure and act with the ability to respond. And this is the most important thing that must be embraced across everybody in this country, every individual there is out there. If we can all start, composing ourselves under the notion of the ability to respond, then things will change overnight.
Well, the problem is that power comes with responsibility. And a lot of people are too afraid to actually embrace responsibility, because right now we've got so many wounded children walking around who have actually been being rewarded for having problems. Because as Carolyn Mace talks about, we use woundology as a way to connect.
Victimology, woundology, people, yeah. And you know what? That's another thing that needs to stop. Victimization, like self-victimization, must end. We are never going to solve anybody by first of all, crying or saying, I'm weak, help me. You're putting yourself in a position to be a sitting duck for more abuse. It is the time for that is over. And that's another thing this motorcade is about. We are going across country with members of, of the Rasta Maroon tribe, of the Akwesasne, of the Anishinaabe. We're going with regular Canadians. We're going with immigrated Canadians. And we are all going to do this together to show, to stand strong, as we should. Lots of us don't agree on many things, but we don't require to. We don't have to align. We all comprehend that without our differences, we would cease to exist at all. And this is the truth. So we can respect our differences. Like, that's the one thing, like, you see, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to use this as an example because it's so fresh. Look what happened in Ottawa, Ontario. Okay. People get so irrational. Like, you've got all these politicians freaking out. Well, Chris Guy wasn't on the list. Are you telling me that his 7-minute speech was too much to add? That is irrational. That does not promote the principles of freedom. the principles that you've been preaching, which only can result in an evidence that you're riding coattails for political gain. What other, you know, what other conclusion can anybody come to, that anybody who's rationally and logically looking at the situation? None. It is irrational not to add one of the leading voices in the country onto a speaker's list when he only required 7 minutes of time. Instead, they're promoting the notion to amazing nurses and police on guard for who I've been personally, who our entire network has been working with for over 15 months now, that they're not they interrupted their ability to speak. Why? Because Chris spoke for 7 minutes. It is irrational. It is absolutely absurd. So, but when an individual, doesn't matter, political, non-political, doesn't matter, any individual who is going to make an irrational issue out of a simple act that happened, has only something personal to gain from the entire picture. If you're in the service of others, you're going to make room for others.
Yes, I'm just aware of having been in the speakers circuit for like 10 years, and it's just, there are some serious TikTok Nazis, like the people that are like, you know, they know exactly who's who and where it's going, and it's just like extras don't fit. So like, I fully hear where you're coming from, and then it's like there's that piece to it as well, and then there's also the piece that it's just like, if it were the case that I had not been able to speak, I wouldn't be where I am now, because on April 10th, when I got up on stage right before Randy Hillier spoke, simply because I woke up at 3 a.m. and it was like, go to the rally and see if you can get on stage. And I'd been invited the night before, and I said no. Because Mother Teresa said, I will never attend an anti-war rally, but host a rally for peace and I will be there. And so I was trying to take her adage and working with the Peaceful Inner Warriors United initiative in order to, you know, put out good stuff online to unite movements and basically help all of us who are trying to do good in this world to be able to unite movements and actually drop the walls on all of our movements without having to lose the movement itself, but to simply say, look, you keep your platform, I'll keep my platform.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Keeps their platform.
That's right.
Those walls that have now fallen to become the bridges that actually unify us. And that was
But here's the thing, right? So here's the thing. Now, a lot of people will come down on me for what I just said, and they'll be like, but you wouldn't let this person speak, and you wouldn't let this person speak when you were organizing Toronto. Well, I'm going to tell you why. Okay. Because I say it, and I say it in not so many terms. You know, if we allow this to happen, it's going to become an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Now, that is not taking away from Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I've been to many. My own stepfather, I went for 4.5 years to Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, you name it. So I have a lot of compassion for these meetings, and they are absolutely necessary. People need help. Okay, but how does that end the lockdown?
Well, no, it doesn't.
Exactly. So now, in regards to the situation that happened in front of the Supreme Court, how does that end the lockdown? It absolutely does, because Chris Sky has been one of the leading voice amongst all others in this nation to draw awareness and attention to ending this lockdown. So to deny him 7 minutes when you're right, you've been riding his coattails since the beginning. I mean, you know, and not to take away from the work that these politicians have done, I'm not doing that. I would never do that. I would never disrespect the work that any of them have done. But you do not bite the hand that feeds you. It's that simple. Have respect, because you cannot teach respect unless you yourself know it. And this is why I talk about constantly on my lives, defining principles, right? So, you know, a lot of people are like, how can you handle all these trolls? Or I see a lot of good people, like really sweet people trying to go to my defense against a lot of the trolls that come after me. I'll tell you this, I've only got 27 trolls in total. They have multiple accounts, and I know who they are. I have a background in profiling, in human behavior and profiling, that is so meticulous that I can tell who each one of these people are just simply by the way they tighten the words they choose and their spelling, their grammatical errors. Okay, I can tell who they are. So, I am not bothered by anything that anyone ever says about me, because I know who I am,
Yeah.
because I know my principles, I know what I stand for, I know what my goals are, and I stand by them. Because once you truly figure out who you are and what your principles are, there's nothing that can take you off of that. And if it hurts, a lot of people say to me, well, that's offensive. Well, guess what? I'm not standing here handing out offense to anybody. So if you're taking offense, learn not to take it.
Yeah. You're choosing.
And the whole point, sorry, hiccups. The whole point to that is widen your perception. Those who are indoctrinated don't know they're indoctrinated because they are indoctrinated.
Yeah.
It's that's, everything is simple. It's people who complicate things for their own irrational and selfish agendas. And nobody can tell me I'm selfish in this movement. You cannot tell me that. I have not ever worn my own colors. I support all the other organizations that are active and make actual change. Any person who has ever requested my aid, I do my best to make sure I can give them my aid to the best that I can. But I don't know everything. I'm not the Wizard of Oz. Like I don't have a solution for anything. I'm a human being just like you and just like everyone else out there. So, but what I can offer, I will, to the best capacity that I can. And if everybody were to commit to these kind of these elements, we would be a lot further along. I mean, there's so many distractions that are thrown at us constantly and nonstop. I mean, like every civilization requires certain rules to be filled. I actually wrote this to Kirsten Nagel, this beautiful nurse who I adore so much, earlier in a message on Instagram, and this is the truth. Like I stand beside Chris Sky 100%. I don't agree 100% with his methods. He knows that. But at the end of the day, I stand for individual liberties, and he has the right to choose any method he sees fit as an individual to bring forth his message. And considering the favor he has done for everyone else in the movement, the disrespect that he faced the other day is unacceptable. It's simply unacceptable, especially by people who are supposed to be promoting an example to society, somebody in a political position. So, and I never put down Maxime Bernier and I never put down Derek Sloan. What I did say is that, you men should be disassociating yourself publicly from the events that took place that day. And if you don't, then you are guilty by association. And it's pretty simple, because you two have been writing, and everybody, is like, and I keep using Chris as an example. Now I'm just using this as an example, just to be clear to everybody. I mean, how much money did Chris Sky make off selling his books? How much money did Randy Hillier make off his signs? Where's that question? This man is supposed to serve the public. Why are his pockets being lined? Chris Sky owes nobody any explanation for anything he does. He's an individual who operates in society and has done favors for this freedom movement, of which he has no obligation to do, unlike these politicians. Why aren't people asking these questions? Because they're being distracted by an immature, radical, and irrational argument being put forth by politicians that are supposed to serve us. So really, at the end of the day, you need to question yourself in the most simplest way. And I say this to everybody all the time too, what is the most important question in all things political, social, and civil? Who benefits? That is the only question that matters. Who benefits? And if not the goal, a task, and if not everyone, then that person is opposition. It's that simple. Sorry, I know how when I'll go off in a tandem, I'll go off in a tandem.
Honestly, the last thought that comes in that I was thinking about before we went elsewhere is about Plato's cave analogy.
Wow.
And really about how it's like the person that leaves the cave in order to experience a brand new world and then comes back into the cave and then suddenly shares with all of their terrified family and friends
I love her.
in the dark the fact that those shadows on the outside are not monsters like we've always been taught, guys. Those are actually this and this and this magnificent thing that's just on the other side of that liminal threshold between the world that you know and the world that you could know if you just joined me and was 30 seconds of courage. And
open that basement door and run into that darkness.
right?
You might be shocked what you don't find.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like Marianne Williamson's poem, Our Deepest Fear.
Yes.
It's not that we are inadequate, it is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, the most frightens us. And then we ask ourselves, who am I to be all of these great things? And then yet, who are we not to be that which we seek in this world?
Well, and that's it, and this is a struggle that I face, okay? Because I've got many people who have who she thinks she's a leader this, leader that. I never gave myself the title of a leader.
Right.
That was everyone else. And I never asked to be on a microphone in front of people. To be honest, I personally prefer to strategize from the background and keep a low profile, but that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. A microphone was put in front of my face. I spoke, and there was no turning back.
Right. Yeah.
So why can't I do both? So I do both, is to my, and a lot of people think, oh, she's just looking for fame. If I want fame, I can get fame. If you want fame, you can get fame. Fame is easily gotten.
Yeah.
It is very easily gotten. If you put your mind to anything, you can do anything. If I wanted fame, I would have let newspaper articles be published about me since I was 17 years old. Right. But we wouldn't allow it. So I don't care for fame, and to be honest, the position that I've been in now for the last year and a half has been more of a burden than anything. More of a burden. It has taken time away from my kids, and it's taken time away from doing the things that I love. But the truth is this: all of these things are threatened if we don't act. Yeah. So, rock in a hard place. What am I going to do? I'm going to take the path that's going to make it better for my kids. Yeah. And there's nobody that's going to stop me on that path. Nobody. I mean, I've been arrested 48 times now, nationwide. I've been arbitrarily arrested without access to lawyers, without access to phone calls twice. The second time, I just got out of prison last Saturday, where they kept me for 4 days. And strip searched and you name it, and put into isolation because I refused to be coerced into vaccination, as they're trying to do in prisons. The entire lineup that was behind me, I also influenced to refuse the vaccination. So they put all of us into isolation cells. I then taught them all how to sing to each other, and by the grace of God, two of the guards at Vanier prison happened to be people that follow me on Instagram. And they were showing all the other guards, no, look, this is who she is. And by the grace of God, they opened the little tiny slits that are used to serve food to the isolated prisoners. And they turned on the television, and 4 of the guards had come up and engaged in conversation with the prisoners to keep them company, which I found beautiful. This is humanity. Yeah. And the only thing that prevents and yields us from acting in a human manner is distraction, delusion, and a lack of information. And so, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way. This, we're going to be doing this motorcade, and we're going to be knocking on the doors of Canadians across the entire country. It's time to do it the old-fashioned way, because every other access, is being censored. Even though Bill C-10 didn't pass, they're still censoring people. I've had my Facebook shut down 25 times. I've lost photos of my children I will never, ever get back. Yeah. And like I said, there's a lot more burden that comes with this role than people realize. Of course. But it's worth it, because every child is somebody's child. Yeah. Every person who, even those who are against me, these are all still somebody's child. So fight me all you want, I'll still fight for you.
Well, truly, and in the fall, I'm involved with album 22 that drops July 22nd. And then in the fall, we're actually going to create another album. But this one, we're actually going to use the theme of healing the child within us, because there's that whole
Beautiful.
notion about hurting people hurt people. But then there's
Yep.
also the notion that's less talked about, but that's actually more useful, which is the fact that healed people heal people as well. So it's like we really need to move away from the victim mentality and the victim.
It makes you sick. It does.
And well, dis-ease is cellular disharmony. And then even
That's right.
at that point, I've always had a giant.
I love that. Let's go back to that for a second. Dis-ease is cellular misharmony. Dis-ease, disease.
Yeah.
See what I mean about definitions? It is time for us to define simple terms for what they are, the original definitions of what they are.
Yes. Well, good faith, bad faith.
That's
when
right.
we say that our faith is being attacked, it's not just a religious thing. It's actually a lawful thing.
That's right.
So if we don't understand definitions, then those very definitions can be the thing that actually undermine us. Because when we
destroy us.
When we step into the court of law, we're stepping into 3 jurisdictions simultaneously. Land,
yes,
which is your common law. Then you've got air, which is ecclesiastical canon law, which then we have water, which is your maritime admiralty law, which is your contract law. And if you think that you're just standing under common law, but you have judges in the other 2 jurisdictions, because it's the court of LAW, all 3 of those jurisdictions, not laws, because space, which is God's territory, is not governable, nor is it definable. And it's about our titles and our names.
Land, admiralty, and water.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we actually start to understand these natural principles, if we start understanding, comprehend is the mental.
But to understand something would be to stand underneath it and be ruled by it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to break down comprehend in my
head.
It's just like,
comprehend would be to actually comprehend the situation, would be to embrace it, learn it, master it.
Yeah, well, that's what this whole experience of being human on planet Earth is about. It's like we're actually here to become ascended masters. Of course,
absolutely we are.
Jesus Christ was not the only Son of God. Like, we are all individuated expressions of the grand overall designer in individualized vessels that transport us through the waters of the mothership, or the lands of the mothership in. And it's just like, we have to really understand who we are, what we came for, which is to transmute karma for ourselves and the collective.
Well, there's a lot. We had a bit of this conversation last night. And I mean, I've been around the entire world and I've studied doctrines that some pastors and priests will never, ever get their hands on, ever, in regards to Jesus Christ, especially. And I have a different understanding of Christ. And that is because of the doctrines that I have had my hands on. And these are historical documents. And he's traveled a lot further than most people realize. He was a yogi. And the best way that I can explain it to people is this. If you remove the spooky language out of the Bible, things will start making a lot more sense. Jesus Christ, in my opinion, was a psychologist. He was a scientist. He was a psychologist, was his first discipline. And I do believe that he delved in other areas of science, including, including home economics, including chemistry, alchemy, all of it. Mm-hmm. And this is evidenced. I mean, you cannot make wine without water. Mm-hmm. And the leprosy, he go to these lakes, he sent people to specific bodies of water that have high concentrates of lithium. What is the leading ingredient in skincare today? It's lithium. So that means that he had knowledge that these lakes had this ingredient that cures skin ailments. Mm-hmm. You understand? And you can only have these things through experimentation and evidence, and he was a scientist. And what was he fighting against? He was fighting a government indoctrination to the masses, people. He was fighting a government indoctrination to the masses of a corrupt political structure of people who thought that they had the right to choose who lives or dies. So if anybody is going to lead their lives, in the example or the principles of Christ, you need to rise up.
Unquestionably, it truly is time for us to actually embody the Christ-like principles and qualities that
Yes.
he came before us in order to seed within us. And when we
Yes.
talk about him, we have to understand, I believe, that what we're actually talking about is the HYMN of
Yes.
the sacred word, that when used in song becomes the healing tone that heals humanity.
Yeah. Was it 432 megahertz or 500? Somewhere between 432 and 532. I actually learned that from Robin Benedict. So a really good friend of mine who's an amazing musician. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to a meditation at her house before I
Yeah.
had the idea about who
Yeah.
she was with Christian Deva.
Yeah.
So it's such a small world, truly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so music is how we heal humanity, truly. How
Yes.
we can really turn this around, how we can turn the just stop saying no, which is
Yep.
fighting fire with fire. It's just like you say no, but then what do you say yes to instead of that? Because it's like
We need solutions.
of a vacuum. It's like every empty space will be filled either intentionally or unintentionally, and we have to choose whether we're going to allow the sand to just fill back in the hole or whether we're going to put something inside of that hole so that then when the water comes back in and the other elements start moving things around, we understand what's already there as the foundation because we set it, which is why
Yes.
so important as we drop the walls on all of our respective movements so that we can actually come together and harmonize humanity, that we can actually set the foundation for the new world that we're creating now.
Yes.
New orderly world now. This is what we're literally now doing, and we get that, and some who watch understand that, but then there are others that are still completely duped by the indoctrination of being indoctrination, where our power is placed into the external authorities.
That's because when people are indoctrinated, they don't know they're indoctrinated.
Well, exactly. We're taught what to think.
But there's also the element of nature, right? So, and it sounds really cold when I say it sometimes. The truth is this: we are not going to save everyone. There is a balance in nature.
Yeah.
And this is the truth. And like I said, the truth doesn't care about our feelings. And so we're at the point now where, like, and like Chris says it too, and everybody's coming on this thing, we got to give it one last real good go. And we have to exemplify exactly what we intend to conclude from our actions in a way that it promotes a visual on a mass scale so that we can manifest a new beginning. Because the only way to do this, to manifest a new beginning, is to have a collective consciousness joined together in one orb, in one thought, even if it's only for a splice of a second. That's all it takes to create adaptation. And without adaptation, there's no evolution. And without adaptation, and without evolution, there's only one other option, because that is the balance of nature, and that is to perish.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have to decide. It's a very simple decision. Do you choose life or do you choose death?
Yeah.
And before you make this choice, I would ask every person out there to look upon a child's face and think, for real, think. Do you choose life or do you choose death? because you'd be choosing for that child. That's okay.
Yeah.
So my phone died.
Fair. Yeah. Naturally, that's how it goes.
That's crazy how my phone died right there, right? Like
Symbolically, everything is completely significant and poignant because it's all a microcosmic, macrocosmic reflection.
yeah.
So it dying in that moment was
Perfect.
exactly perfect. And
Well, I think that this should be part 1 of a series.
yeah, exactly.